Good evening, everyone. It's at 7 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jeff Elshoff.
Here.
Dr. Joel Schroeder.
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith.
Here.
Miss Diane Nguyen.
Here.
And you have and Mr. John Welsh is absent. And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening, we have Father Terry Hedrick from Bel Aire's Church of the Resurrection on 37th Street to lead us in prayer. Father Hedrick.
Let's pray. Again, Almighty God and Father, we come to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, giving you thanks that you are present here with us now by your Spirit. As we gather, we give you thanks that you are good and gracious God, abounding in mercy and steadfast love. We also thank you that there's been some relief from the COVID-19 virus in our country and in our community. We continue to pray for further relief and especially pray for those areas and countries where the virus is still bringing devastation and death. We want to remember to pray for all those who are in authority, for the President, for the Senate, for the House of Representatives, and for all the leaders of the nations. We also pray specifically this night for the City Council of Bel Aire, especially for Mayor Jim Benage, City Council members, and all the leaders of this community. Tonight we pray that you will reveal to the Council the knowledge of your will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding in order that they may be fruitful in their service. Anoint them with your spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose for the common good, they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all the people in the Bel Aire community. Grant that they may love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly with you. Finally, we remember the gospel that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself. May each of us be ambassadors of that same spirit of reconciliation and peace. And we ask all this in the strong and wonderful name of our Savior Jesus, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, both now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, I have a proclamation. For the citizens of Bel Aire, Kansas, greetings. Whereas the Second Continental Congress adopted the American flag on June 14th, 1777, and whereas June 14th, 2021 marks our 244 years of displaying our American flag, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize Old Glory as a symbol of hope, inspiration, and pride for the people of the United States and around the world. Whereas in order to commemorate the adoption of our flag on August 3rd, 1949, the Congress, by joint resolution, designated June 14th of each year as Flag Day and requested that the President issue an annual proclamation designating the week in which June 14th occurs as National Flag Week, and a call upon citizens of the United States to display the flag during that week. And now, therefore, I, Jim Benage, by the power vested in me as mayor of the city of Bel Aire, and on the behalf of the City Council and citizens of Bel Aire, do hereby proclaim June 14th, 2021 as Flag Day in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, as to our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of our country by displaying our American flag at their homes and throughout the country. Pass that to clerk, please. Moving on to item 6. Are there any agenda additions to consider? I believe we have a slurry seal bid to add to the agenda.
Yes, Mayor, we do have an agenda item to consider. Did everybody get that updated? Yes, okay. So we have an additional quote we'd like to add to the agenda.
Okay, do we need to make a motion to do that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to add the slurry seal bid as an additional agenda item.
Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to add the slurry seal bids for additional residential streets to the agenda.
I'll second.
A first by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. I will make that item P2 on the agenda. Because we have IP and we have others that it just fits in there. Okay. All right. So the consent agenda contains only the minutes of May 18th City Council meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve this consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Ms. Nguyen. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item 8, discussion and approval of appropriations ordinance. During this period, we paid traffic control services almost $14,000 for equipping the 3rd Police Department car, as well as $228,448 for capital improvements.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 21-10.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schroeder, or motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. So we have no city requested appearances this evening. We'll move on to citizens' concerns. I see there are some citizens here. Ms. Bonnie, would you like to come speak with us?
Good evening. My name's Bonnie Stinson. I live at 3800 North Harding. I'm here tonight just to voice a couple of concerns I have. May 28th, I asked for the missing agenda items R and S, which were the contracts for the attorney and the city manager. I was told that they were not available. They would be later on. So I went to check tonight and they're not on there. And I find out that I'm not going to be able to get them until they're finalized. So I know in times past I have received the potential contracts or whatever, supplements, whatever. So I kind of am curious as to what has changed. I do know that just the discussion in a public meeting of business triggers a Kansas open meeting. So I don't understand why these documents are not available. The International City County Management Association says that these discussions should be held in public meetings, that the residents have a right to know what's going on and where their tax money is going. It's in the interest of transparency that they are held, and that after they've been held on contracts, they actually should be posted on the website. And I know that Ms. Sexton, the manager at Derby, has hers out there. I have seen it. I know you're going into executive session tonight for some negotiations, and I don't know if this is permitted under that or not. It kind of leads you to believe that it's a bargaining unit, but maybe not. I don't know, because I'm not up on all that. So if you're going under executive session to discuss this, I guess that's what you're going to do. I do want to know, though, why WSU's recommendation has spurred this on. It sounded like there was a real priority for commission to make sure that the manager and the attorney are getting their fair share. They are, they've had one supplement. This will be the second supplement. There's tons of money that is going into some 457s that are not being matched. I think that's wrong. I think somebody should be putting in, other than just the city, for somebody's retirement plan. At my best estimate, and I can't tell you exactly what, because the bonuses they're getting on the land bank sales are to remain a secret, because I don't know what they are, and if anybody else does, that'd be great if you'd share it, but oh well. My second topic today is the front page of the Breeze. It had city streets to get slurry seal treatment. Oh, goody. And tonight on the agenda, there's another slurry seal treatment also. The one in the Breeze was $417,000. And that's great. And I'll finish it. Okay, so tomorrow's going to be our 1-year anniversary that Aurora Park presented their petition on our roads. And since that time, we have had 2 surveys done regarding drainage. And that's it. That's all that's happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens' concerns for this evening? Hearing none, I'll move on to council member reports. Dr. Schroeder, would you like to begin?
I have no report.
Mr. Elsoff?
I have no report, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith?
I have no report, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Nguyen? Okay, all right. Well, I'll give my report then. Okay, so on the Woodlawn project, last Friday, we learned that KDOT is planning a September bid letting for this project. So I sent an email to our contact at KDOT requesting that they look at expediting this. KDOT holds bid meetings once per month. So this morning I received a response that said there were multiple items that KDOT needs to do, and it was not offered. We were not offered any information as that an earlier bid date could be considered. I did offer to provide KDOT with any additional information they may need to move this date up in their schedule. So we'll see what happens with that. I did attend the Sedgwick County Association of Cities SCAC meeting on May 20th. It was held at the Riverfront Stadium. We were given a tour. This is an excellent stadium, almost the level of a major league stadium, just a lot smaller. So I was very impressed with everything that it offers. I encourage anyone who's interested in baseball and stadiums to visit the Riverfront Stadium when you get a chance. Wind Surge is playing baseball there currently, so I don't know if they're playing tonight, but they are playing their schedule there. It's a little weird schedule. They said that like there's 6. They do, it's like a 6-day homestand there, and then they're off for 2 weeks or something like that. I don't know. It's a little bit different than what a normal baseball schedule is, but they are doing it. So. SCAC did reelect its current slate of officers for another 2 years, and on September 25th, Bel Aire will host a SCAC meeting here at our community room. On Friday, May 21st, I had a telephone discussion with our auditor. These discussions are a normal process of audits. Her questions were in regard to any knowledge I may have of fraud or embezzlement. I, of course, have no knowledge of such. We have no reason to believe any of our staff would engage in such activities. I do believe we need to be ever vigilant of any open opportunities we may see for this to occur. And when gaps are discovered, we should then close those gaps and keep our city's finances protected. On Thursday, May 27th, I went over performance reviews for our city manager and our city attorney. They're both performing excellent for the city. And I'm very glad that we have people with such professionalism and integrity in these positions. On May 27th, I did attend the Chisholm Creek Utility Authority Board meeting. The annual audit report for the CCUA was presented by the auditing firm BT and Company. There were 2 small issues raised in that report. One had to do with segregation of duties, and that's always a tough one for small organizations. The CCUA has put a plan in place to address this issue. The audit also noted significant misstatements in trial balances that were not initially identified internally. But this, of course, is why we do trial balances, so that we can have the opportunity to identify things of this nature. We discussed this issue, and we will be having CCUA's accounting firm shore up some of those journal entries that they've not been doing. We also approved a purchase order for rehabilitation of well number 4, Bel Aire well number 4. This continuation of the present preventative maintenance program established by CCUA. It helps assure all wells are maintained in good working order so that they can be utilized as needed and minimize unplanned downtime. And lastly, we appointed Jacob Coy to our utility manager to represent CCUA in Groundwater Management District Number 2. This allows CCUA to sit at the table in discussion and issues related to groundwater management in our area. I understand this group mostly consists of farmers, so having CCUA at the table helps us to better understand their interest and for them to better understand our interest for successful solutions to issues that may arise from time to time. On the COVID, KDHE is reporting almost 42% of Kansans vaccinated with at least one dose. This is up less than 2% from May 14th, so slow progress, but we are seeing encouraging results. Sedgwick County is reporting a 3.5 month basically flat line running of positive infections between 2.3% and 5.2%, with last Friday being 3.8%. We have never seen a run that long since the beginning of the pandemic, declaration of March 2020. So this is very good news, and hopefully the flat line will continue deep into the future. And at that, I'll ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's pretty quiet on the legislative front, but I did get a question that I thought might be generally interesting to the public related to someone serving 2 offices generally. And so I wanted to explain what protects citizens from the mayor appointing himself to council or someone serving on 2 governing bodies. The common law doctrine of the incompatibility of office is the rule there. And what that does is it's a common law idea, which means it's not a statutory rule. It's just arised over time through judicial practice. And what it means is that if an office is incompatible with another office, so if the mayor were to appoint himself or herself to planning commission, that would be an issue because planning commission addresses something that the council will eventually address. So someone were appointed to 2 offices or 2 offices, they would have to decline one of those offices. That's not in statute. It's not in our code. It's a common law judicial standard. If the council wanted to codify that, they could pass a charter ordinance, and that charter ordinance would make it a rule. So nobody could serve in 2 incompatible offices. But for now, the common law practice protects that from happening here in Bel Aire. So that's what I have.
Thank you. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The K254 Corridor Association will be holding its first in-person meeting in over a year, and it will be here at Bel Aire on Friday. So at 11:30 over the lunch hour. So if anybody would like to attend, you're certainly welcome. It'll be here and lunch will be provided. And I did want to mention for our citizens that today was the deadline for filing for city council mayor seats. And our mayor position is elected every 2 years. And so there are 2 people running. Mayor Benach is one of those. We have 3 seats that will be open in this election in November. That would be Councilmember Elsoff, Councilmember Smith, and Councilmember Welch. And there are 6 people running for that. So based on that, there's no need for a primary. So the election in November will be the final election to determine those seats. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Move on to ordinance, resolutions, and final actions. So item A is 2 seats on the planning commission are reserved for individuals who live outside the city limits with planning commission's zone of influence, but not in another city. So that's a pretty narrow area. This makes it difficult since Bel Aire borders Wichita and Keachai. As a result, these 2 seats have been vacant for the past 2 years, leaving the commission with only 5 members out of 7 seats. D. Ross lives within this area and previously served on the commission from 2011 to 2019. If approved, D's term would last 3 years and end June 1 of 2024. So is there a motion concerning the appointment of D. Ross to the Planning Commission?
Mr. Mayor,
Elsa?
I motion to accept the mayor's appointment of D. Roths to the Bel Aire Planning Commission.
I will second.
I have a motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second from Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item B is a resolution authorizing offering for sale of general obligation bonds. So there are a couple of issues here. There's a general obligation refunding bond series 2021A. With interest rates being exceptionally low, the city's financial advisor and staff are recommending the advance refinancing of our existing series 2012A and series 2013D bonds. Estimates show a total net present value savings of $604,000 or 12%. The refunding bonds will be priced on June 15th, and this resolution approves the notice of sale. There's also a general obligation temporary notes series 2021B. This resolution authorizes general obligation temporary notes series 2021B. Within the next year, the city will be financing a number of infrastructure projects that are included in the temp notes. So Kevin Cowan from Gilmore & Barrow is here to explain his actions and answers to any questions. Mr. Cowan.
Good evening. It's a great description of what this does.
Always
The
have
bonds
good
are,
notes.
sorry?
People always give me good notes.
The bonds are fairly straightforward. Current refinancing, as we call it, it's what we have just been through in connection with the Public Building Commission bonds in terms of a refinancing. And as was mentioned, this would call for a sale of those on June 15th. If the market moves, if there aren't sufficient savings on June 15th, you would simply reject bids, and Adam Pope with Columbia Capital would recommend that you reject bids. And so my point in saying that is this is the initial step, and based on the information that was mentioned before, if this is something you want to proceed with, this will set that in motion so that on June 15th, I'll be back, Adam would be back, hopefully presenting the results of a really good refinancing bond sale that day. That's for the bonds. The notes, maybe not more complicated, but as you've all experienced over the past number of months, there are a fairly large number of new projects, infrastructure projects for various developments. And so this would call for the sale of those notes on the same day. You probably heard me talk about a preliminary official statement, which is it's the prospectus for selling bonds and notes. The advantage of doing these at the same time is you can use one of those documents. You don't have to have two separate documents and make extra work. We can achieve some economies of scale that way. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this at the same time on June 15th, having the sale. And a number of the projects that would be included in these temporary notes, I'll be standing up here in a moment talking about the authorizing resolutions if you've looked at the agenda. So that's, again, this is sort of the kickoff resolution. We call it the sale resolution, where it simply authorizes staff, bond counsel, your financial advisor to do the things necessary to come back to you on June 15th with the results of the sale of those refunding bonds and temporary notes.
Any questions for Mr. Gowan? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I'll motion to accept the resolution authorizing the offering for sale of general obligation refund bonds series 2021A and general obligation temporary notes series 2021B of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Schroeder and second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item C is a resolution authorizing certain street and water system improvements. So with construction taking place on Central Park 3rd, as well as potential development of the 24-acre parcel across from City Hall, Now is the time to finish Prestwick Street to 53rd, as well as complete the loop in our water main. Both projects benefit the city at large and therefore funded as such. Staff can answer any questions about the project, and Kevin Cowan can answer any questions on the note.
This is a little different than the ones we'll be talking about in a minute, in that city at large, as was referenced, there aren't special assessments. It's just this small portion of Prestwick, both from a street improvement standpoint and then the water loop running along it. So this resolution authorizes bonds to finance the cost of those two projects on a city at large basis, and it would be part of the temporary notes that we referenced a moment ago.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
with this being looks like a smaller project, I don't recall the exact dollar figure right now for it. The question for the city managers, did we entertain the idea of funding this without bonds?
Yes, and we may be able to do that depending on what the bids come in. Another thing that may play in is we're hearing that the American Recovery Funds, some of those pay for infrastructure improvements. So we're thinking that we may actually be able to pay for the water extension out of those funds. So not even out of our general or our water funds. The street portion is going to be probably in the $400,000 range. So that would be a little, I mean, we could do that, but then we'd have to limit other projects. So that's the idea on the street portion. But the water portion, we may be able to pay cash and then not finance it, or we'll have grant funds basically to pay for it.
I was thinking that typically we would bid these projects, we'd pay for them with a temporary note, and then like 3 years later, we issue the bonds for them.
Right.
It seems early to issue the bonds.
That's probably me. We're authorizing the bonds, and under our state statutes, you have to authorize bonds, and if you've authorized bonds, you're authorized to issue notes. So yeah, this would be included in the notes, and I was thinking of that as well. It could be, depending on the timing of things, it gets included in the notes. But if you have federal funding or something else that comes through in the meantime, maybe it's not part of the permanent bond issue in a couple of years because you have funds to just pay off that portion.
Fantastic. I thought I must have misunderstood you. I thought you were
Yeah.
saying
No.
that we were offering the bonds for this right now, and it just felt a little early for that.
So this is just for temporary notes, just to do this project. And then
Right.
if we have funds from other sources, we can pay those off and not bond them out.
Right. And in this resolution, and it's similar to the ones we'll talk about, I call a project authorization resolution, where it's just limited to this project, recites your authority to undertake the project and issue the bonds. And then once you're authorized to issue the bonds, there are a number of things you can do. You issue temporary notes, maybe you never issue the permanent bonds, but it's that step that allows you to sign contracts even before you've issued the temporary notes. And then, as I mentioned, issue temporary notes if need be.
Thanks for the clarification. I was a little confused about myself, but that's good.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to accept a resolution authorizing certain street and water system improvements to and along Prestwick Avenue in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city to pay such costs, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. On to item D, is to consider resolution determining the advisability of making certain internal improvements. And items D through I, all related, but as we know, we have to go through each one of these separately. So the revised petitions were approved by the City Council on April 20th for paving and sewer, phases 1 and 2 of Rock Spring 3rd edition, as well as phase 1 water improvements. The original authorizing resolution needed due to the amended petition. So the cost of these improvements will ultimately be spread to the property owners as special assessments. And Kevin Cowan from Gilmore Bell is here to answer questions on each resolution needs a separate action.
And I'm glad you mentioned these sort of as a group D through I, because that's how I've grouped them in my own mind. And I'm going to give you some background. I don't know if you need this or if it's helpful or not, that Rock Spring 3rd Edition infrastructure projects were included in the last series of temporary notes the city issued in late 2019. The initial petitions were not phased. It was just Rock Spring 3rd Edition. Just after the temporary notes were sold, amending petitions were submitted that separated the addition into phase 1 and phase 2. And so we've known for some time that we would need to have amended and restated resolutions to recognize we went from something that was just going to be addition, all improvements at once, to phase 1 and phase 2. And now we're proceeding, or the developer is proceeding with phase 2. So we're taking this step now to recognize we now have phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, if you see some of these things, those projects are included in those temporary notes from 2 years ago. And so this is a bit of cleanup on that. We just needed to make sure we moved into that phased concept before we go to assessment proceedings and have all of that in order. Phase 2, though, are projects that are going to be included in the temporary notes that we've discussed. So again, that was helpful to me to think about it that way. I don't know if it's helpful to you. Again, if we're talking about Rock Spring 3rd Edition, phase 1, amending, restating, none of those are part of these temporary notes. They were part of an earlier temporary note issue that, again, went from a full edition to phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 will be part of these notes. So it's kind of a all-at-once effort to address Rock Springs 3rd breaking into phase 1 and phase 2.
It's good to know the history there because I think we sometimes forget it.
Right, and it's not easy to keep track of sometimes when you have a lot of activity.
Any questions for Mr. Cowan? If not, I would entertain motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I'll motion to approve a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements to the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making the improvements in accordance with such findings, pavement improvements / Rock Springs 3rd Edition, phase 1, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution NR number R1906, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion for Dr. Schroeder and a second for Mr. Elshoff. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item E is a related issue.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elshoff.
I motion to approve a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, paving improvements, Rock Spring 3rd Edition, phase 2, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution number R-19-06, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Elshoff and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item F, continuing.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, sanitary sewer improvements, Rock Springs 3rd Edition, phase 1, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution number R1907, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item G, continuing on.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements to the city of Bel Air, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings. Sanitary sewer improvements, Rock Springs Third Edition, Phase 2, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution number R-19-07 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Elsoff. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Continuing on to item H.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsoff.
I motion to accept a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, stormwater drainage improvements, Rock Spring Third Edition, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. And then moving on to item I, which is the last in this series.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I move to accept a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, water distribution system improvements, Rock Springs Third Edition Phase 1, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution number R-1909, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item J is considering a resolution determining advisability of making more improvements. Items J and K, the Developers Bank requests an adjustment in the benefit district to encumber fewer lots in Phase 1 improvements. As a result, the petitions were revised to meet the new number and accepted by council on April 20th. Now amending resolutions to authorize funding come from before the council for consideration. The cost of these improvements will ultimately be spread to the homeowners as special assessments. Each resolution needs separate action. Kevin Cowan is also here to explain the actions and answer any questions.
This one's a little more recent. In April, the governing body had initial petitions and adopted resolutions 21-04 and 21-08, authorizing Phase 1 and Phase 2 sewer improvements. And then I think also in April, later in April, the amending petitions were submitted for the reasons that were just mentioned. The changing of the number of lots, the project description hasn't changed, the estimated cost hasn't changed. So this was, again, something we knew in late April we were going to have to take care of because we had the amending petitions. And so these, again, are more recent projects, will be included in the upcoming temporary note issue as well.
Good. Any questions for Mr. Cowan?
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings. Sanitary sewer improvements, Skyview at Block 49, Phase 1, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution number R-21-4, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Elsoff. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item K, same issue.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsoff.
I motion to accept a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings. Sanitary sewer improvements, Skyview at Block 49, Phase 2, and amending, restating, and repealing resolution number R-21-08, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item L, ordinance changing the zoning classification from R4 to R1. So the developer requested a zone change from R4 to R residential to R1 residential for larger lots. Planning Commission considered the application for this rezoning at their May meeting. After thoroughly reviewing the matter in relation to the golden factors, the city zoning codes, and Planning Commission recommended council accept the rezoning. The city attorney can answer any questions. This is not adjacent to 53rd, is it? This development. It runs on along Oliver, but doesn't go clear to 53rd, does it?
Actually, this, it's a little bit farther to the, well, it's actually along 50, or a wood lawn in 53rd Street. So this is a little bit farther in. So this is the wrong slide.
Well, this isn't the right slide.
Right.
Oh.
It's actually, okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, Ken Lee with Garver. We're actually the ones who submitted the zone change application. This is that is actually the correct area for the zone change request. What this is if you're familiar with Alley Park, that's at the northwest part of Park Vista 3rd Edition. That's at the very south corner of that parcel right there. So this is across the tree row to the north from there. So Oliver is on the west. 53rd is about a quarter mile north of what appears in this slide. And the property owner that's working on this project, they're looking at doing larger estate lots in this area instead of the denser urban style lots. And there's actually a significant amount of earthwork they're planning on doing with this project too. So it's going to be an exciting change of pace, but they're looking at doing larger estate style lots here.
So is it single family homes?
Yeah, it'll be single family homes. And we don't know the exact final configuration or lot sizes yet, but they're looking at the intent is to probably be building homes in the $800,000 to $1 million ranges where they'd like to be at. So in terms of, you're going to have fewer lots, but much higher value. So.
Any discussion concerning this issue?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to make a couple of comments. So I think this definitely is the type of improvement or change that is going to improve the character of the neighborhood. And I like the fact that we're moving towards an area of single family residences and higher value. I think that's always a good move. I think we have always sought to seek out balance in our community, but single family homes is kind of the primary residences and types of buildings that we have in Bel Aire. So it sounds like that's the case. And then with the dirt work required and the modification to the land to get this piece of land to where it needs to be to fulfill that, I think that's something that is I think supports the character of changing the zone from R4 to R1. So I certainly am supportive of that. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
this change makes sense to me. I think our planning commission did a fantastic job in the staff report summarizing the discussion on each of the golden factors here. This seems like a slam dunk zone change to me. So great move.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, I looked at what the planning commission gave us. I don't have any reason to doubt their work, and I think they were very clear. So I'm also for it.
Ms. Wynn, would you like to chime in?
I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. If someone wants to call, I can't call for a vote until I have a motion. I'll call for a motion.
Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead of you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Elsoff.
I motion to accept the ordinance changing the zoning classification from R4 residential to R1 estate residential on certain property located within the corporate city limits of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, Chapel Landing Edition, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Elsoff and a second by Mr. Schroeder. This is a ordinance change, so it does require a roll call vote. And so I will start with Mr. Elsoff
Aye.
and Dr. Schroeder,
Aye.
or Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen,
Aye.
and I will vote an affirmative as well, so the motion carries 5-0. Item M is the developer's agreement for Rock Spring 4. For every new development, city requires a developer's agreement be negotiated and approved. The agreement spells out in writing the responsibilities of each party during the construction and after. The agreement is filed with the plat for future reference. Staff and the developer have agreed upon the language contained in this agreement, and staff can answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to accept the developer's agreement for Rock Springs 4th edition and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item N, as in Nancy. This is consideration of accepting a bid for Skyview Block 49, Phase 1. So the developer here is moving forward with Phase 1 sewer improvements. The cost of these public improvements will be financed through a bond and spread as special assessments to the benefiting lots. 5 contractors responded to the solicitation for the bid. City engineer Ann Stevens is here to explain the project and answer any questions. Stevens.
Yes, the bids were accepted on May 25th. We did have 5 bidders responding to the project. All but one bidder was over the engineer's estimate. Fortunately, we had one that came under, Apex Excavating. While we have not worked with them directly as in a contractual relationship, we have worked with them on multiple projects as subcontractors. Garver is the engineer that designed the project. They have worked with Apex Excavation on as a prime contractor on other projects in Mays and surrounding communities. They have had good work experience both with us as a sub and with Garver as a prime contractor, and we would recommend that you accept their bid.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith?
Um,
Mr. Smith? Okay, sorry.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid from Apex in the amount of $259,762.60 and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item O, approving City of Bel Air sidewalk replacement program. So the council discussed this program at May workshop, and staff made adjustments accordingly, and now it comes before council for final approval. So, any discussion concerning this? I did have a question, I think, about putting the word may or something to that effect in there.
Right, Mr. Mayor, if I can draw council's attention to Section 3, the policy, the first bullet point there, the City of Bel Air will reimburse property owners for 100% of the cost. I think the mayor is asking for a clarification, and I didn't quite get that from watching that meeting, and I think we need that now,
Okay.
whether it shall be up to 100% until the funds are exhausted, or whether it shall be 100% all the time, every time there's an applicant. So that's what we,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
it's my recollection that it was until the funds that have been allocated have been exhausted, and that would be my intent. And so whatever wording has our city attorney comfortable with that clarification would be my ask there.
Okay. The only concern that I have about that is you're probably never going to have something exactly match whatever that budget is. So somebody's not going to be able to get the 100%. And then I think you get into this splitting hairs about, well, you weren't fair to me or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I just think we might be wiser to put up to 100%, but I understand what you're saying, that first come, first serve, we do it that way. And so anyway, that was my only concern, and it's fairly minor in my mind, but it's something I just thought I'd better bring up.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I think what you're saying is the very last person that's eligible when there are still funds left, if there aren't funds to cover 100% of that project, that would be where we would have an issue.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would want whatever was left to be distributed at that point, and then that would be it. But
Mr. Mayor, one thing, if we put just simply up to, then it would be flexible on every single one, right? And I think the intent is to have it all covered until the last one. Is there a way to have that accurately spelled out?
I think if you put up to 100%, that will take care of it. I mean, the administration, because you don't want to put 100% every time, but if you put up to 100% and the city manager and his staff understands your goal is to do 100% this year, then next year when you might only be able to do 50%, you still use the same policy. So if you're comfortable, up to 100% can work. If you want it to be more clear, we can add an extra line stating that 100% would be the amount we would give in most cases, and I can come up with that language and clarify that if you want more clarity. If you don't, I think this does it, if you just add the mayor's recommended up to.
And this is just for this year because we'll reconsider this next year.
Mr. Mayor, I am open to whatever and can be talked out of it. I tend to think more clarity is better in this case. It probably doesn't matter that much, but I sometimes when you say, well, just remember our intent, and then, it's maybe sometimes not the way to go. If we're talking about just adding a sentence, I would add the sentence.
You are talking the year.
The year 2021.
Yeah.
The calendar year
Yeah, it's
is,
not
and
some
it
weird-
does end, I think there was a date on there of December or something of this year. It's over.
Right.
Right? Okay.
'Cause
Yep.
I think if you got into that, well, the year's not over yet because we've set some different parameter there. Maybe you're probably gonna- There's not much of this year.
Yeah. The dates are set in there. There's an application date you have to meet in October, and the project has to be done by a date in December. And I can't remember the exact dates, but I do remember that portion of it. So,
I put an extra sentence, property owners will be given up to 100%. And then the next sentence says, until funds can no longer meet the 100% threshold, at that point, remaining funds will be allocated to any qualifying applicants. I mean, I feel like that language needs to be, that language needs to be stretched out. But if that's getting to your goal of clarity and also giving everyone up to that point 100%, then we can do it like that.
okay. I'm good with that if everybody else is. You are.
Do you have anything in case it's a smaller amount and we want to carry it over into the following year?
No.
No.
It's just a one-year deal. And we're going to revisit it next year, or at least that's the plan, is to revisit it.
Mr.
I realize that it's supposed to be a 5-year deal,
And I think the intent also was that, say we have $10,000 and we get $11,000 in applications, then that last $1,000, I could come to the council and say, okay, we've got one more, and that would cost you an extra $1,000. Is that something you'd be interested in funding? And then you could make that determination as, yes, let's go ahead. That would fund all of the applications we got. It's $1,000 over, but we're comfortable with that.
Mr. Mayor, I'm certainly for this, and I think I was for it when we were discussing it and whatnot. I am glad we're revisiting it. It's something new. All cities don't do it. Maybe we won't like it. I think it's going to be good to reevaluate it next year.
Mr. Mayor, I think those changes that our city attorney presented make a lot of sense to me. I think this will be a great program for us to try and see how much value it creates for the community. And then, like Councilmember Schroeder was saying, revisiting this on a regular basis, I think makes sense based on the utilization, the budget, what we're seeing from a results perspective. Adapting this over time will be key.
Mr.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
More discussion, that's fine.
I guess I have more discussion.
Okay.
I guess I just like to weigh in with my comments. So when we discussed this issue, I expressed opposition to this at the workshop. And just to clarify what we're talking about, so per state law, the responsibility for the cost of the repair of sidewalks is to the resident that is abutting the sidewalk. And so what this policy is going to do is give the city the ability to cover the costs of any sidewalk repair so that the abutting resident isn't the only one burdened with the cost, that it's spread to everybody in the community. And I guess, I understand the principle and what we're trying to do here, but I'm still opposed to this. I think that, a lot of cities handle this differently. I'm not advocating for any of those other than I think we should just go with what the state law currently is and as we have been. I do speak out against this as somebody that has sidewalks and has had sidewalk repair. So I'll be voting against my own financial interest in this because I don't think we should do it. It's been said, based on history, last year we had about $10,000 worth of sidewalk repair, and opening it up like this, I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe it'll be that, maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. But I don't know. I guess the bottom line is I don't think we should be adding this financial cost to the city. Even if it's a little bit, I think our priority should still be city streets. And, I think also there are people that live in houses or residences that don't have sidewalks, that maybe don't use the sidewalks. And I guess my vote against this will be a vote to support those that, don't want to be paying for sidewalks they're not using. So I don't intend to vote for this, but I presume it'll probably pass. But
Thank you for your input. We always need everybody's input.
Mr. Mayor, I also spoke up in the other discussions we had about it because I'm in that older section and I have no sidewalks and I want it to stay that way. And I don't want to be paying for some of my neighbors to put them in, but I don't want to be paying for theirs. Yep. I don't want to be paying for my neighbors if they already have sidewalks, because I'm not ever going to have them as long as I'm alive. And I kind of agree with him. If the sidewalks are put in by the city, then there's some balance of it needs to last for a certain amount of time. But if they're put in by the homeowner totally, I don't see where the city has any reason to maintain them. And I'm kind of reading that that's all iffy in there. So I'm not totally against it, but I am against it.
I understand. I do believe there is one clause in there about that this does not remove the responsibility from the homeowner for the sidewalk, and and its maintenance. It only gives them an opportunity for reimbursement of those repairs if they should be needed. Obviously, and I know that code enforcement is, we've kind of talked about code enforcement, and if we find somebody that's trying to abuse this, we would probably say, we're going to quit doing this. If we'd have that kind of a situation, although it's just a 1-year deal. So right now, so there's not going to be much opportunity for abuse there. But I mean, I think in future time, you might see that, but I hope you never do, because I can't, that's not the purpose of this. This is to help people, because, those sidewalks were put in typically through specials, like we've talked about on all these resolutions earlier. And so those homeowners that don't have the sidewalks in neighborhoods like mine, I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house, but I'm a proponent of this because I don't think it's fair that I get a free ride when my neighbors have those sidewalks that I get to use. And I don't have to do anything about maintaining those sidewalks. So that's my view of it. But yeah, I do appreciate your perspective, and I understand. So, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councilman Elshoff's and Ms. Wynn's views are completely logical, make sense. I think if we kept it the old wet policy, I wouldn't consider it unfair or something like that. A few other positives I see to this, as well as the city being able to hopefully do it, maybe it'll be cheaper if we can do it all together. I think that, am I talking myself in the corner? Are we doing the contractor if they apply for this and we hire the contractor?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So if we hire the contractor, we do them all at once, it should be overall cheaper than if each individual person had to, figure out how they're going to do 1 or 2 slabs. So I think there's some efficiency there when we all kind of pool our resources there. And I also see added advantage of just less friction with the city, less another time that the person comes out and tells you got to spend hundreds of dollars to fix your sidewalks. No, there would be nothing wrong with that. I mean, the inspector is going to come out and tell you something else, and that's okay. That's how it works. I don't think there's anything evil or wrong with that. I just see this is another advantage. We can just let a little friction of that go, as well as sort of the efficiency on the economy of the scale is the city being able to kind of do it all at once.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the City of Bel Air Sidewalk Replacement Program fiscal year 2021 and authorize the mayor to sign.
I will second.
Point of clarification, there was a suggested amendment to this. Do you want to include that in your motion?
I do want to include that. Do I want me to reread that, or?
You made the motion, you have a second. Why don't you?
I'll withdraw my second.
Withdraw your second. Okay, now you can
Take amendment.
amend your motion without having to have the mayor offer an amendment.
Okay, and I'll amend that motion by including the amendments that were made.
I will second.
A motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed,
Nay.
Nay.
the motion is tied 2-2. I think as on tied motions, as mayor, I have an opportunity to vote on this.
This does qualify for
Okay.
the mayor's breaking the tie.
So I will vote in affirmative. So that will be a 3-2 with the mayor's vote, and the motion passes 3-2. Moving on to item P, request for waste connections for a 2% increase for solid waste and recycling fees. So in 2016, the city entered into a 10-year agreement with Waste Connections to be the preferred trash and recycling hauler in Bel Aire. The agreement states that Waste Connections may request a rate increase each year. Herschel West is here with Waste Connections and to answer to address the desired rate increase and answer any questions. And Mr. West, would you please come to the podium? I do have a question for you, and I also want to allow the council opportunities to ask as well. So, and this is just a concern that I have concerning last year. I believe the Waste Connections canceled curbside cleanup and another program due to COVID. And during the freeze in February, there was no pickup of trash or recycling for 2 days. And Waste Connections decided not to make those pickups at all. So the normal process is that when that happens, you shift it and pick it up the next available day. So residents ended up having to wait an additional week for trash service and a full month for recycling service when that happened. And these are significant concerns to service quality to our residents. So I want to try to understand what can Waste Connections do to tell us about future service quality and how you can address those, because that's a concern that we're hearing from citizens, and we need to see what we can do to help them out.
I understand your concerns. Due to COVID last year, I think we only serviced, like you said, the cleanup once. And that was due to the volume. We would hope you'd understand the volume of trash that we picked up that year was record high. We had drivers working a lot of overtime, and the drivers that do the cleanups on Saturdays volunteer. Not volunteer pay or whatever, but they volunteer to work. So we thought we cut back a lot of cleanups, and we came to the city of Bel Aire and requested just the one cleanup for 2020. The February incident, the polar vortex or whatever you guys want to call it. I've been with the company for almost 20 years. I'm 57 years old, and I've never seen anything like that. We didn't want to put our drivers in harm and have them out in that element for a long period of time. Normally, if we do skip a day, we run a day late, just like on holidays. But if it goes to 2 to 3 days, 2 days or whatever, 2 days, then the number of customers that we have, there is no way we'd get caught up. We would prefer just to wait a week and pick up all the extra. And we picked up a lot of extra. And that with the trash and recycling. I know it was a pain for a couple of weeks, or a week for the trash and a month for the recycle. But it's just one of those things that we decided was the best thing for us to keep our drivers safe and out of those elements.
Well, I appreciate the need to keep them safe with the cold weather like that. But it was just that it wasn't shifted. It was just not done.
No, but we picked up.
And you did pick up extra the next
Yes.
week. I understand that. Yes.
It would have shifted. If it would only been one day, it would have just been a day late. You would have had everything. If you were serviced on Monday, we would have got you on Tuesday. But it was 2 days that we didn't do anything in the city, Wichita, and surrounding areas. And the number of customers we have, there would have been no way we would have got caught up.
Was the city verbally notified?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember what transpired on that, but I'm sure you've communicated it in several ways. So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions or discussion from Mr. West?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Certainly.
Did we authorize an increase last year?
In 2020, we didn't come due to COVID. We thought, with everything going on, we didn't request one. We haven't received one since 2017. We were denied in 18 and 19, and then we didn't request one in 2020.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
can you explain to me where the recycling goes? Like from beginning to end?
Yeah, of course, you put it in your cart. Hopefully, it's not contaminated. We have seen a lot of contamination. That's part of this China, the National SWORD program. China stopped taking our recyclables in January 2018 because of contamination. They are seeing almost 25% of contamination. So as long as there's no contamination, that's perfect. Your recyclables go into the cart. We dump the cart. We take it to our transfer station on 96th and West Street. That's where we take our trash to. We have a pile for recyclables, a pile for trash. The recyclables go to our recycle center in South Hutchinson and get processed there. And once processed, we got buyers for glass, aluminum, and still all of our products. Of course, due to the SWORD program, the commodities are crap.
So once it gets to South Hutchinson, you guys don't touch it anymore? Is that right?
Yes, we bell it and we ship it out.
It's quite an operation they have up there. I've got the opportunity to tour that a
Group
couple
of,
years ago. Yeah, from Utility
From Bel
Advisory
Aire.
Committee.
Has that
Yeah.
been like 2 years ago, three?
I think it was
2
two,
years ago.
might have been three. I can't remember,
Yeah.
but I remember doing it.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive operation. Just don't send plastic bags.
Those, yeah. No kind of plastic bags.
Mr. Mayor, in your letter, you talk about the increase in recycling fees. Can you talk a little bit about that and that being the primary driver for your request? Just so
Yeah,
those watching understand.
The processing fees have increased. There were no processing fees. Probably, I don't know the exact date, but it started sometime in 2018. And they kept going up and up. And that's due to the collection and the processing at our recycle center, and then not getting the rebates that we were. So the processing fees have increased to range from $100 to $140 per ton in the Midwest.
And the company that does the processing and charges the processing fee, is that a Waste Connections company or is that a third party?
It's a Waste Connections company.
So it's the fee that you guys are kind of charging to yourselves?
Yes, because
Okay.
it's costing us more money to process. As
But
you
you-
see, like the city of El Dorado, they stopped their recycling program. More than just, I mean, there are other cities around the US that have just stopped the program because of the cost has increased.
So my understanding of why China stopped accepting our recyclables is not because of contamination necessarily. It was so dirty to process it all. They didn't even want it, right? It's just so environmentally destructive that they didn't even want it. And the reason we were able to start doing it is because they shipped so much stuff to us. We had empty containers doing nothing. So when we sent it back to them, pick up more stuff, we took our trash and they didn't even want our trash anymore, essentially. Do you know of the long-term plan of what we're going to do here in the U.S. Based on your knowledge of what to do about this now that China no longer wants even China doesn't want our stuff?
I don't even want to try to answer that question. I don't know. Our goal is to continue to recycle. We hope to continue to recycle as long as we keep the contamination down. We haven't really been able to do many audits like we used to because of COVID and the volume of trash that we're picking up. So we kind of gone away from that. We'd like to get back in to see what the contamination percentage is here before the end of the year.
So when I've looked at our contract previously, and I know we've had this conversation before, I've looked at the clause that talks about, Waste Connections can come and can ask for up to a 2% increase every year. And as I've reflected on that this year and in the past, it's, kind of meant to me that, hey, this is here as an opportunity for the city to partner with Waste Connections in the event that there's some unforeseeable increase that, you wouldn't have expected when we kind of negotiated this 10-year agreement. And that, in my mind, is kind of the main reason that I would be in favor of adopting one of those kind of percentage increases, is if it was as the result of something that was unforeseeable and not something that we would have factored into our long-term contract. I think I'm feeling like the fact that China is no longer accepting our recyclables is it probably fits that for me. I think that's something that maybe we probably didn't expect when we entered into this agreement, and I can see how that changes the dynamic quite a bit. I guess the one question I have is, where do you see the recycling cost going? Is this just going to be something that goes up and up and up, and like we need to be thinking about other alternatives here? Or I guess, how are you advising communities on this at this point?
I'm really not. Like I said, I don't have a crystal ball. I'd hate to say it's going to get better, and it doesn't. Hopefully it does. I just hate to put any kind of answer to that question because I don't know. Seriously, I don't know what's going to happen.
Go ahead.
Your customer for plastics does a regrind for so that the plastics can be reused in injection molding and that kind of processes, or are you aware of what they do with them?
I am not exactly what they do with them. I know we only take plastics 1 through 2. Excuse me. We take plastics 1 through 7,
Yes.
but we only recycle plastics 1 through 2 because there's no market for 3 through 7 out there.
Okay.
Once that happened, the market went away. But we want people to continue to put 1 through 7 in there. So, because it's easier to train. I mean, easier to keep them to do that and say, than to say stop. And then when the market does come back, all right, now we want you 3 to 7. We'd rather sort those out
Okay.
and keep everything that we're getting.
It must be quite a job to sort those out. Okay.
Do you know how much of the recycle that, we collect actually ends up in the landfill as a result of contamination or being no market?
I know before COVID, we did an audit for Harvey County, and it was over 20%.
So over 20% gets recycled?
Oh, no, contamination, sorry. 20% contamination.
So what percent gets recycled of the stuff that gets sent to you?
Then was when we did out 80%. 20% was contamination, or over 20.
Help me put that together with we don't recycle 3 through 7. So people are putting that in there. So the 3 through 7 is not getting recycled, right? Okay.
That's correct.
So therefore, is that 80% include the 3 through 7?
I don't believe so. When we did that, I don't think that was part of. When you see contamination, I pulled out a cart from one of the cities that we do. I dumped it on the floor myself. There were tennis shoes, there's food waste, kitty litter, and a recycle cart. So that's what we really call contamination. I mean,
Mr. Mayor, I had to have a little different view on this than Councilman Smith. I think here we've had a complete total lack of planning for the future on what to do with our waste and recycles. And the fact that we sent it to China was an accident of history. And we have not planned for this well enough. And I don't think it's necessarily on the citizens of Bel Aire to do this, because I think we should have been planning for this, because I think this is something that if you follow people that follow this stuff, this was a plan that should have been known about and is something that could have absolutely been foreseen as a problem. So I wouldn't be in favor of it this year.
Can you please, I'm sorry, can you please clarify what
So depending on China to send our recyclables to them, that being a potential problem is like a known problem that I've known about for years. So them saying it's unforeseen, it's not, I don't think it was unforeseen. I'm not in this business, and I knew it was a possibility. So I in my view, it could have been foreseen. There's no plan.
I think the issue is that in 2016, it couldn't have been foreseen because it wasn't until 2018 that they stopped taking our recyclables. But that's just my understanding. So, okay.
and I'm looking at also, it's a 2% increase. It's 24 cents a month, $2.88 a year for each customer if they have a 95-gallon cart. I mean, I find that to be pretty reasonable.
Ms. Wing, you wanted to say something?
Well, I don't know you personally, but a lot of people over there do know me. And I also sit on the board of the recycle center that's down south in the south part of town, and have since it was moved from garage to garage, weekend to weekend kind of thing. And that's how this industry actually started, was people who didn't want to just throw their trash somewhere else and move it along, and nothing ever happened with it. I agree with him. We should have been a lot smarter, a lot sooner. But the raw materials that are coming in are impure to begin with a lot of times. Would you agree? And separating them back out and then, using a complete and clean plastic, I'll use that as an example, kind of thing, because that's one of the worst. It's very expensive, and nobody wants to pay very much to get rid of their trash. Am I right?
Yeah, nobody wants to pay Trash or recycling, yeah.
Yeah. It is a problem and we have to solve it. You know, somebody smarter than the guys who are driving the trash trucks have to solve this problem. You know, and we can keep hauling it from here to here to here, and that's no solution. And even sending it to China didn't work out. So it's a horrendous, and it's not just that. You know, it's not just this particular group. It's everyone in this industry. And even though the recycle center is still open down there because it's public, okay? It's for the people who don't have any other option. They'll bring their stuff down there on Saturdays. And I invite you to come with me sometime because I work there a lot of Saturdays. And I come home pretty dirty. But it's something that I believe in fully. Not only does the country, you know, depend on us coming up with something, but our health depends on us creating some things instead of allowing this stuff to just rot around wherever it's, you know, thrown. I will admit I was headstrong and headlong, which is why Bel Aire has a recycle program. You can stick me in the back for it or whatever. I don't care. It's one of the best things, the cleanest thing. We're one of the cleanest cities around. And I'm proud of that. I guess I'll shut up. I don't want to blow my horn. I'm just saying, you know, I've never worked with you personally, but I've worked with a lot of people over there. Sometimes got a little heated even here and there. But they're fighting that fight that everybody needs to be fighting, figuring out, you know, how. Not blaming you, but I'm just going to say that when she handed me this tonight, that's at least a half a ream of paper probably. Paper isn't free and it doesn't go away free, and it's not her fault. It's just the way it is. But, you know, back to the nastier stuff that they have to, it's all of it. And, you know, I grew up on a farm. We used to feed our trash to the chickens. Sometimes the chickens didn't live either.
Well, I do think we need to be good stewards of the earth, and recycling helps us do that. It's not a panacea. It's not a perfect solution. It gets a step towards it, so I'm always in favor of recycling when it's working. I've heard of cities that take the recycling and just dump it with the trash. And if you're going to do that, then don't do a recycling program because that makes no sense at all. That's just extra cost for no purpose. But Waste Connections is doing that sorting and the dirty work and actually doing a real recycling program, even though they said some of the plastics they can't currently recycle because of the market. They hope they get back into that even. So that would be great if that can happen.
Yeah.
So I'm always a fan of recycling programs that actually recycle.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I have a comment. So, you know, we're in the middle of this 10-year contract with Waste Connections, and I appreciate the reasons that are cited here for why Waste Connections is asking for this increase, and it's authorized in our contract. But I guess I just still fail to hear a compelling reason that we should vote for an increase. The contract's in place. You know, there's 5 more years to go. If I have the opportunity to vote for an increase or against it, I'm going to vote against this. I don't think we need to increase the costs on the city for this program. So I won't be in favor of this.
And Mr. Mayor, I would also comment too, the fact that I was not compelled that this was an unforeseen thing that they weren't expecting. I think they could have foreseen this. Therefore, this does not convince me to raise it. I hope does not insinuate that I'm not fully in favor of recycling. I'm the guy that tries to refuse the straw every time, even though it probably doesn't matter. Maybe it's just symbolic. I think recycling is important, like super important. I probably one of the most ridiculous person on environment here, but I don't think this is unforeseen, and I don't see that they couldn't have foreseen this coming. Therefore, I'm not convinced of the 2% increase, along with Councilman Elshoff.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
question for Waste Connections. I think what I was reading between the lines in the letter is if the 2% increase isn't authorized, you guys will look to end our recycling program. Is that an accurate interpretation of what I'm inferring from the letter?
We talked about that. Like I said, the 2% doesn't really cover our costs in recycling. So we have a new DVP that is like, yeah, if we haven't got anything the last 3 years, and odds are we're probably not going to get it. I don't know, next year or the following years. By the way, council is speaking tonight. And this is one of the roughest patches that we've gone through in the last 3 years. So in the letter it does say we may, but we don't know that for sure. And like I said earlier, it's a 24 cents a month increase, $2.88 a year increase if you have a 95-gallon cart.
Yeah, I'll just say where I'm at on it right now is I'm somewhat conflicted because I agree with Councilmember Schutter's comments that if he was aware of this, I wasn't aware of this issue 5 years ago, but if he was as somebody that isn't in the business, then that does kind of take it into that foreseeable section for me of something that somebody that is in the business could foresee, and that puts some cloudiness there. And when I take that into account with the quality of service incidents that we've had over the past year, that's also certainly something that I'm thinking about because, historically we've had excellent service. And then in the last, I think year and a half, we did have the canceled curbside event and we had the missed pickup. And then the Recycle Bank program, I think, was also ended, which is something that some people in our community were accustomed to taking advantage of. And so there has been kind of it's starting to feel like a trend in declining quality of service that I hope isn't actually a trend.
So due to the COVID and the weather, you can't see the reasons for I wouldn't say bad service, but the issues that had happened.
I think that I certainly understand keeping folks safe. I think the thing that sticks out for me is one of the biggest things is for the folks that had to go a whole month without a recycle pickup. That seems like a really long time to not have that service.
Even though we picked everything up and more.
Do you know how many times there's been an increase in what you're paid? Do you know how many times you've received an increase in what you're being paid from Bel Air?
The increase we received from Bel Air, 1.5 in 2017.
And that's it. Right?
That's it.
I'd like to make a suggestion. I don't know if the council would entertain this or not, but I just want to throw out a suggestion. One of the things that I'm concerned about with your request is that the numbers, while you give some anecdotal references to issues that are going on in other communities, we don't see real numbers from Waste Connections. We don't see cost of fuel increases. We don't see wage cost increases. We don't see how those are real numbers to you and a trend in those real numbers. We don't see the trend and cost of recycling to your distributors that you sell to. And I think it might behoove Waste Connections to consider putting together a trending spreadsheet of some sort that would actually tell us what's going on with these cost increases. I get that you're going to have them. I understand that. You know, we all get cost increases in our personal lives and our business lives and all that. So, but that would give us a little harder things to look at than the anecdotal, well, Olathe had this issue or Lawrence had that issue or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think somebody mentioned that last time, and I mentioned it to the DVP and our controller, and there are some corporations that they don't release their individual unit financials, and we don't do that.
We're not asking you to release financials. We're asking you to show us what those costs are that are affecting your service to Bel Air. So you have a fuel cost to Bel Air. What's that cost looking like? I mean, you buy, I don't know how much fuel you buy, but you buy 2,000 gallons of fuel to service Bel Air a year, and the cost is, $3 a gallon in 2018. It went down to $2.80 in 2019. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers here. I don't have an exact idea, but somebody has that. I'm not asking you to give us your financial statements, not at all. I'm just asking you to show us what the justification for those increases that you're saying you're incurring in cost, and that's not the same. Okay.
Yeah.
I've made several proposals to a lot of businesses, and I never released the financial statements to them, but I did tell them here are what our costs were for doing this project. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if that would help the council make a better decision on this, but I'm just suggesting that maybe that would tell us the story better.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of consultation with an attorney pursuant to the KSA 754319 exception for the same. For the period will be for a period of 10 minutes, with the open meeting resuming in council chambers at 8:40 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder for executive session for 10 minutes for consultation with attorney, client. Any discussion regarding that? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Be an executive session for 10 minutes. So, is there any So I'll call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session and no binding action was taken. I think we're going to entertain another motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll vote to extend the executive session for 10 minutes and to return at 8:52 here in the council chambers. And I also want to include the city manager.
I will second.
I have a motion from Dr.
Yep,
Schroeder.
that was a stumbly
You
motion
said
there.
vote, so
Sorry.
I want to make sure it was a motion.
Motion,
Okay,
yep.
thank you. And a second from Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. For the people in the audience, we are changing venue on this and we're going to a conference room in the back. So you're welcome to stay in here if you'd like. Okay? Call the council meeting back to order. We held executive session. No binding actions were taken. Ready to move on to consideration of item P. Does anybody have any more discussion or want to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, looking over the contract did not provide more clarity for me at the moment, so I'm sorry for the silence. I'm still thinking. Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I'm willing to make a motion if people would just like to do that to kind of make ourselves decide, or would we like to have more discussion?
I don't think I need more discussion.
Yeah, I don't think I do either.
Mr. Mayor, I think that means they're telling me I should be the one that goes out and make the motion.
If you wanted to.
Yeah, I think wanted to is generous. I'll make a motion to accept the request from Waste Connections for a 1% increase for solid waste and recycling fees for 2021 effective June 1st, 2021, and just the solid waste and recycling fees in accordance, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second it.
I have a motion for Dr. Schroeder and a second from Ms. Nguyen. Any additional discussion? This is a motion to accept a 1% increase.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I'm still a little conflicted on this one. The 1% increase might be a good compromise here. So I think I can probably support that.
Good. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, obviously I was not in favor of it and still kind of have those same arguments. I think their arguments of not understanding the China things are kind of baloney in my opinion, but we do want to keep a good relationship with our trash group. I think hopefully these were hiccups and not going to be continued problems and frustrations that some of we've had. And so I don't want to seem uncompromising or unwilling to work with others. So I am willing to consider 1%.
Mr. Mayor, I still intend to vote against this voluntary increase.
Thank you. Any
I'll
other-
state my opinion. I want to keep recycling in Bel Air. I worked too hard to get it here. If you can read lips. And we'll accept the 1%. And I really think that we need to work with the company and the company needs to work with us, okay, of making that relationship stronger. It used to be stronger. And the world has changed. That's outside of the motion, but, if we give you the 1% right now, will it give us a little room to negotiate some things? I'm hoping.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay?
Motion carries 3-0 with Mr. Elsoff voting no. So 1% increase is approved and
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
yes.
Would you please clarify the result of the vote?
Okay. The vote is 3-1. Did I say 0? I said it wrong, didn't I? Thank you. I just now, when you asked that, it just now dawned on me that I said it wrong. Okay, the vote is 3-1 with Mr. Elsoff voting in the negative for the record. I hope that that is satisfactory with you, and I hope we can do some things to improve our relationship for the benefit of the citizens of Bel Air. I do want to see us do well, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item P2, the slurry seal proposal that was brought in, and we amended the agenda to include, and I don't know if we have a written out a motion for this, but at least we can talk about it.
Yeah, there is no written motion about this. It was caught at the last minute that this didn't get on the agenda, so I apologize for that, council. The slurry seal bids were approved. Bid was approved at the last meeting. They're actually out there getting started. They're doing the rehab work on Webb Road. They have been doing that for a couple days, so they'll get that done and they'll slurry seal that and they'll move to the residential streets. Staff has gone through, we have rented a crack sealing machine and have completed the work in the Willow Creek subdivision, which is 44th Street Courts, Rushwood Street, and the Rushwood Courts. We would like to have those streets slurried yet this year to prevent further maintenance needs down the road. The longer that sits without being slurried or without being topped, then the more maintenance that needs to be done to that. So that's why I'm here asking tonight. If you recall, we had solicited bids from 3 contractors. We only received 1 bid because the other 2 contractors are no longer doing this work. We have reached out to Wichita, to Sedgwick County. They no longer do this work. They do other treatments. We are still working with those to kind of learn more about the other treatments and potentially looking at those other treatments next year. The bid from South Central Slurry and Sealing and Paving was $39,413.49 for those additional streets. We are getting the same unit price for the additional footage that we had for the original bid. So there has been no change in unit price. It's just the additional quantity. With that, I'll stand for any questions if you have them.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
what's the timeline expected on this work getting completed?
I do not have a specific timeline, but I would imagine barring any additional weather coming in, it should be completed within the next 2 months.
Thank you. I'm certainly glad to see more street work getting done. So this is exciting. I'm glad we got it onto the agenda.
And Mr. Mayor, I usually have a hard time saying no to street work unless we just absolutely can't afford it. So Mr. Mayor, can someone speak to just the fitting in the budget and whatnot? I just want to make sure, just remind us of those numbers.
I don't have that in front of me, but I believe that we set aside about 1.2 million for street improvements. And we didn't expend all of that money on the last projects that you had discussed in the workshop. And so it seems like there was about 150,000, give or take, that we had for overruns, or if something came in less that we could do more, something like that. So that's where this would come out of, that little balance, or projects that weren't identified yet for that 1.2 million.
And we are working on getting bids on the remaining street work and hope to have that to you. I'm not sure if it'll make the first meeting. I believe we're shooting for the first meeting in July.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
are we looking at doing this type of treatment or resurfacing on any of our arterials, like 45th or Rock, or some of the roads that are pretty bad that maybe we're a little ways out on completely replacing?
Not at this time. We are doing, this current contract is for Webb and Greenwich. Part of the work that we're currently soliciting bids for, and that will hopefully come in July, is for the patch repair on Rock, as well as patch repair on 45th and Oliver. So that's not the slurry sealing, but it is starting to rehab some of those streets.
I think that the proposal I have in front of me is for Rushwood Courts and 44th Street.
Correct.
Okay. I thought you said something about Greenwich.
Webb and Greenwich is being done currently with the
On the past
proposal.
proposal.
Contract.
Yes,
Yeah.
that council accepted last meeting.
So we were going to look at something on Woodlawn from 45th to 53rd. Was that just a crack seal or was there going to be slurry as well?
It's, at this time, it is just crack seal,
Okay,
trying to get the most bang for our buck.
I did it.
Because typically we do crack seal and then slurry seal on top of it. Is that
Correct.
right? Yeah. Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal from South Central Sealing and Paving in the amount of $39,413.49 for the slurry seal treatment on Rushwood Street, Rushwood Court, and 44th Street and 44th Court as depicted in our packet.
I'll second.
motion from Mr. Smith and a second from Dr. Schroeder. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor, can Mr. Smith add authorizing the mayor to sign those documents?
And authorizing the mayor to sign those documents.
I agree. I'll second that amendment.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item Q. Is there a need for an executive session to discuss contract negotiations related to non-elected personnel? Hearing none, we can go on to item R. If you don't feel we need executive session. So items R and S, the council completed a salary study, and part of the changes took the position of city manager and city attorney out of the salary schedule. We did improve the salary of other positions within the city that were below market, particularly the police. The result of that is the governing body will determine salary and benefits each year based on market experience and other factors of said positions. These addendums make changes to the original employment agreement and the first addendum based on the market and study. So do we have a discussion or motion on item R?
Mr. Mayor, discussing contracts and we're talking about the city manager contract, the bonus on the land gets brought up from time to time. And I'd like to just talk about my feelings on that. So if you say, I really want to motivate an employee to do this thing, and then I don't, and then when it comes time to argue why they shouldn't get a raise, it's because of their bonus. It's not a bonus, To
Right.
motivate an employee, I need to actually give them a bonus. And so when I consider what contract to give an employee, I wouldn't calculate, the bonus based on, extra work. The point of that is to provide extra motivation, and that's how I view the bonus. So therefore, I would not calculate. We could discuss whether we want to get rid of it or something like that, but it's a separate discussion of whether from their base contract as far as their view. At least that's how I viewed the bonus we were providing in this particular case, because we were trying to say, hey, City of Bel Aire, every time you walk around the city of Bel Aire, what does everybody complain about? Land, right? Land. And it was like, my motivation was like, we need to do something about land. And this is a best way, or one of the best ways I knew to motivate. And I think it would completely pull that motivation out if I suddenly said, oh, but now I'm going to consider that amount of money we paid extra in your base contract. So that's how I'm viewing it. If people have questions related to that bonus.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
I was just going to add, that these are tricky topics because we have two employees of the council that aren't elected officials. And so, they didn't sign up to have all of the details of their performance and their contributions aired publicly. And so I know it can be frustrating at times for not all of the details of those conversations to be out in public as the contract negotiations kind of happen behind the scenes. But I think where we've arrived is really reflective of the contributions that both our city manager and our city attorney make, and taking into account their unique skills and the contributions that they're making to our city. And we've tried to structure their agreements to really align their personal incentives with that of the city. And so I think that these changes make sense and are fair.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, can I ask for a 10-minute attorney-client executive session and invite the city manager? I think we have an executive session built in
We
here.
did,
So
but
if
no one
someone,
wanted to call it, but
yeah,
we certainly can.
if there would be a motion for that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
anytime our attorney asks for an executive session, I'm happy to give her one. So I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to the KSA 754319 exception for the same. The meeting will be for a period of,
I'm sorry, to discuss attorney-client advisement under the attorney-client exception.
Oh.
Under that
So do
same
you want him to
KSA.
You want him to restate?
let me
that?
redo it.
Okay.
Please.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of attorney-client consultation pursuant to the KSA 754319 exception for the same. The meeting will be for a period of 10
Yes.
minutes.
Yes.
And the open meeting will resume in council chambers at 9:18 p.m.
Second.
And it did originally, I'm sorry, you did include the city manager, is that correct?
I did not, but I can if you would like me to.
Yes, I don't.
I
think
will
that-
amend my motion to include the city manager.
Thank you.
I second the amendment.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Elsoff for a 10-minute executive session under attorney-client privilege. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. We're in executive session for 10 minutes. held an slippery road maps. Okay. We held an executive session. I call the meeting back into order. No binding actions were taken. Move on to item R. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I guess I'd just like to make a comment about this issue. So this is the employment contract for city manager. And as already has been stated, the issue of the city manager having a bonus that is tied to land sales was mentioned. And I guess I just wanted to just put in my 2 cents. So we implemented that bonus as a means of motivating selling the land. And that's something that other city managers generally don't do, because most cities generally don't have land that is being sold. And the way Councilman Schroeder put it is that the bonus is generally not something that is tied to the salary, although it's considered overall compensation. It's not salary. And just like any other position, the salary is treated somewhat separately from the overall compensation. So we came up with the bonus as a potential experiment to see if we could trigger more land sales, because it is additional work that the city manager does contribute to getting land sold. And so I think we have seen in the last year that that was a fruitful endeavor, that having a bonus tied to land sales generated land sales that we hadn't been seeing before. So that is something we're continuing on with the city manager. I think it was a good thing to do. It was good for the city. It proved to be a way of increasing land sales. And if we thought that was excessive or not something we ought to be doing, or if we had second thoughts, we'd look at other options or cut it out or cancel it. But it's something we think is a good thing to do to continue on with. So that's one of the features of this contract, is continuing the bonus to the city manager for tied to land sales. And just so the public is aware, the record of the contract will be available in open records requests. So it'll be available. So after this meeting. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to just explain a little bit more how people can get access to that record, so people don't feel like, just explain the process to get that? We hate to air every detail of everybody's finances out here, but it's not a secret. We don't want anyone to not know. Can you just kind of explain that just for a
I will
second?
defer that question to Mr. Lasher, because I'll screw up the details. He'll know.
So it's all of our documents that you take action on are available to the public under the Kansas Open Records Act. And so someone can simply come in and request a copy of my contract, or our city attorney's contract, or our pay schedule, or our personnel handbook, anything they want to know about employees. They could come in and request a copy of that, and we simply give them a copy. And so that's all that has to be done. It's very easy. And so that's how cities stay transparent with the actions that you take. And they're available to anyone that's interested. That doesn't even have to be a citizen.
Thank you. Appreciate the explanation. I would just like to say I have been surprised beyond my dreams of how well we've done with these land sales. I thought if we could get $1 million, that'd be fantastic. In 2020 and the first quarter of this year combined, we did $5 million in contract sales. Now, not all those are closed. Some of them are still out there to be closed yet, but $5 million is just astounding. we've done a great job with this, and I hope to see more of the same. It's just, so I am just very impressed by it. I think that the incentive worked. It changed the approach that we were taking, and I think it's been very, very successful. So I do appreciate everybody's effort to make that happen. Do we have a motion?
Mr.
on
Mayor.
item R? Mr. Smith.
I move to approve the second amendment to employment contract city manager and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Second was Schroeder. Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Smith and a second from Dr. Schroeder. Any additional discussion on item R for the city manager's contract?
Just one clarification. So for approving the second amendment, that doesn't mean we're getting the city manager a rifle. Is that
Has nothing to do with that. We actually, that was approved way back when we did the competition originally. And that was the. there
Thank
was
you for the
negotiation
clarification.
on that one too. So, thank you for the clarification.
You know, punch
I
it
will-
in there.
Okay, if there is no other discussion, I'll call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. And item S, related to city attorney.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the second amendment to employment contract city attorney and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Elsoff. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. I'm going to get tired of executive sessions, but I am going to ask for an executive session, item 13, lucky number. How long do we think we need for this one? Okay. So do we have. a
Mr.
motion?
Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I move to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of attorney-client consultation about preliminary contract negotiations pursuant to the KSA 754319, exception for attorney-client privilege. Invite the city manager, the city attorney, and Grant Glasgow. The meeting will be for a period of 20 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 9:49 p.m.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in executive session. We'll be holding executive session, no binding action is taken. Call the meeting back to order. We're on to item 14, so workshop. So we have 2 items to discuss. First is employee handbook. The second is adjusting the term to 4 years. This is something we talked about a few years ago. And we'll have the discussion at the workshop, but I'm thinking starting this in 2023, not in 2021. The term starts in 2023, December, and possibly consider putting term limits. So one thing I think is a great idea of term limits is making it 2.5 times the term. And I think that would be appropriate to all elected officials. So, this is my feel of that I think all elected offices should have term limits. We'll have that discussion next week. Okay. Any other items that we need to have in workshop discussion? Now, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. Second. Okay. And then you can no discussion about that. So, Ms. Owens. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.